notified Congress ahead of this, and does Congress?
Well, we did. We notified Congress. I mean, we notified the Gang of Eight. We notified. It requires us to do that. The law says we have to.
Good Monday evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls. We had a gorgeous day today. Lots of sunshine across the area, and hopefully you had an opportunity to enjoy it because we have a lot of changes ahead of us this week. But it's going to be a very spring-like weather pattern. So for those of you that are hoping for warmer temperatures, we have a little bit of that in the forecast, especially later this week. But we also have several chances of rain. It actually looks like a pretty soggy week ahead of us. Beginning tomorrow, we're going to start to see rain chances creeping in, mainly during the late afternoon into the evening hours. But then that's going to continue into the overnight, and then we just see round after round after round in the forecast through the remainder of the work week. Right on through Saturday, actually, we have rain in your forecast. So starting tomorrow, keep those umbrellas handy. You will be needing them at times throughout the week. But again, with this being more of a spring-like weather pattern, we're also drawing in some warmer air out of the south. So temperatures are looking nice and mild for us later this week. We're going to detail all of that over the next half hour. And then some models are actually hinting that we may hit 70 by the end of this week in some portions of the area. I don't think it's going to be widespread, and I don't think it's going to be everywhere, but there is a chance that some of us could be coming pretty close to 70 degrees late this week. So let's start things off very broad here and talk about the overall setup that we have. And today we had overall cooler than average conditions where you're seeing that blue shading showing up mainly from the Great Lakes over toward the East Coast, off toward the Northeast. But then high pressure has actually been aiding in much warmer than average temperatures across the south, and then actually all the way up to Montana has been dealing with warmer than average temperatures. So the overall shift in the weather pattern is going to be for us to be able to tap into that warmer air that you see off to our south that we had today. Notice how by tomorrow that's beginning to kind of migrate in the right direction here. So for tomorrow, we're going to start to see that warmer air creeping a little bit farther to the north and the east, moving toward the Great Lakes region. I don't think we're going to be above average tomorrow here in Chicagoland, but we're at least going to be a little bit warmer than where we were today. So today we had this huge range of temperatures across the area. Some areas were only in the 30s. Others were in the 50s, but I think tomorrow we're going to kind of even out the playing field, and a lot of us are going to be spending the day in the 40s, and that's where we're going to stay for a few days. So a brief look ahead here over the next 3 days, the overall weather pattern from a broad scale. You can see that upper level wind pattern, so it's more zonal, meaning that it's running more east to west. When you have something that has large dips in the jet stream, that's typically when you have quite a few storm systems moving through, or at least some really powerful storm systems. Watch as I set this in motion, how we're going to be seeing some storm systems around, but it's kind of following the path of the jet stream, right? So that's very, very typical. And because we have more of that zonal flow, it's going to kind of parade a lot of these storm systems through the same exact region, which is why we're going to see round after round after round of rainfall in your forecast this week, and then likely leading right on into the weekend as well. So I have the clock stopped here on Wednesday, and you can see that there is an upper level system that's moving into the northwestern U.S., so the Pacific Northwest area. That's something that we're going to have to track closely, because I think that particular storm system on Wednesday that you see moving over the Pacific Northwest, notice how we have that larger dip in the jet stream, and I just mentioned that typically when you see that, you have some of your stronger storm systems. So that particular storm system could actually be moving through the Chicagoland area late in the week, and maybe even bringing the chance of some thunderstorms. So we're going to be watching for storm potential late this week and leading right on into this upcoming weekend. Let's talk about today specifically. So average high temperature for this time of the year stands at 41 degrees for Chicago's O'Hare Airport. That's where our official readings are taken from. And today we topped out at 42. So we had a very seasonable afternoon, lots of sunshine. And even our low temperatures this morning, they were pretty seasonable as well. Average is 27. This morning we woke up at 24, and we saw a really nice warming trend through the day because of all that sunshine. Of course, we didn't come close to to either of the records. Record high temperature is 71. That was set back in 1974. Record low temperature is -4 degrees, and that was set back in 1913. Something else to note is your sunrise and sunset times, because we are going to be gaining daylight like crazy through the month of March. We're going to be gaining over 80 minutes of daylight in our days. So really something to look forward to by the end of this month. You're going to notice a huge difference, especially in those sunset times. So on Sunday, this coming Sunday, on the 8th, we have daylight saving time, which of course we are springing forward, meaning that we are going to lose that hour of sleep. But what that's going to do for us, of course, is mean that the sunrise times going to be later, but also our sunset times are going to be later too. So if you were to compare what is our sunrise time, sunset time from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, we're starting with a sunrise right around 6:25 today, and yesterday it was about the same on March 1st as well. By the end of the month, the sunrise time isn't going to be all that much different. It's still going to be in the 6 o'clock hour, but the sunset time is going to be drastically different. So we're going from sunset shortly after 5:30 to a sunset that's likely going to be closer to about 7:30 by the end of the month of March. So we're gaining a lot of daylight, especially on the back end of our day. It's going to be beautiful for a lot of us here going into the sunsets, the later sunsets. And of course, it always just means that summer's right around the corner. So we're getting closer, everybody. All right, high temperatures today. They were drastically different just depending on where you were. So on the northeastern Illinois lakeshore, you can see we only made it to 36 degrees in Waukegan, hit 43 at O'Hare, 41 at the Chicago lakefront, 43 in Gary. But places like DeKalb, we made it to 48 degrees. Same thing in Aurora. We hit 50 in Joliet, 51 in LaSalle, 49 in Kankakee, and 46 degrees in Rensselaer. So the overall setup that we had today, aloft, we had a northwesterly wind, but down at the surface, we had a southeasterly breeze. So Lake Michigan always playing a role in our weather pattern, right? But especially in the springtime, when your water temperatures are still so cold, it makes a huge difference when you have that flow coming in off of the water. And that's what happened today with those southeasterly winds. So that's why temperatures in Waukegan were so cold compared to locations inland like LaSalle, 51, again, Joliet, 50. So we had several locations that were very nice and mild, but tomorrow we will be running at least a little bit cooler for a lot of us. Here's the view right now over our skyline, looking good. We have clear skies. And it's been a very pretty evening for us. Cool. Temperatures are beginning to drop because of the lack of cloud cover. But that's unfortunately going to be changing. And tonight is actually a really good night that we'd want to see the sky because we have a lunar eclipse that's going to be taking place tonight. So take a look at some of these images here. Really cool. You can see kind of that reddish hue. And if you're an early bird, there is going to be quite the show in the sky tomorrow morning, just after 5 a.m. There's going to be a total lunar eclipse, and it's going to last about 1 hour. So during the eclipse, the moon may have this reddish hue. It doesn't always have the reddish hue, according to the Adler, but it does depend on how clear, cloudy, or dusty the air is. Let's talk a little bit about lunar eclipses. What are they? How do they occur? So essentially, when this happens, it's when the Earth is between the sun and the moon. So you have the sun that's, of course, always emitting light, right? When the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, the Earth casts its shadow on the moon. So when you have a total lunar eclipse, it means that the hard shadow of the Earth encompasses the entire moon. And that's what we're expecting tonight. And oftentimes when that happens, you'll hear it referred to as the blood moon. So not only is this a full moon, but it is a blood moon and a total lunar eclipse that we're looking at happening in the early morning hours of your Tuesday. There are 3 different types of eclipses that you'll often hear about. So we have the total lunar eclipse, which is what we're looking at tonight, but there's also a partial and a penumbral. So what that means is when it's a total lunar eclipse, it's when the Earth's hard shadow fully encompasses the whole surface of the moon. So it has that really beautiful reddish hue. Now, when you have a partial eclipse, it means that the Earth's soft shadow, so not the hard shadow that we were just talking about, but the soft shadow isn't quite fully covering the moon's surface. So when you hear a partial eclipse, it just means that it's not fully in that hard shadow of the Earth. So tonight we do have that total lunar eclipse that's coming our way. And if you're wondering about timing, this is the timing for you, but I have not the best news when it comes to the weather department, because we're going to be seeing increasing cloud cover throughout the overnight. So for a lot of us, by the time this lunar eclipse is beginning to get underway, we're going to be having some cloud cover moving in. So we might not have the best view tonight, but for those of you that are really hoping to see it, still take your chances. Wake up early, go outside, look up and try to see it. So if you are hoping to see this lunar eclipse, this is the timeline that we're looking at. So the shadow eclipse begins around 3:35 in the morning, but you're not going to see a lot at that time. Notice by about 4:26, so we're starting on the right side of your screen, kind of working to the left, there's going to be a 50% partial eclipse around 4:26 a.m., but the total eclipse, it doesn't begin until 5:04 a.m. So it's not until the early morning hours. That's when we are fully encompassed in that hard shadow from the Earth. And so beginning around 5:04, that's when you're likely going to see a little more of that reddish hue likely showing up here. So that's what we're going to be looking for around 5. And this is going to last about an hour. So the total eclipse is likely going to come to an end around 6:03. And then after that, of course, we're slowly seeing the moon moving out of the Earth's shadow. So if you're hoping to see this, the best time frame is going to be from 5:04 a.m. to about 6:03 a.m. We have about an hour to see that. Coming back here locally, so not so much in the sky, but here on the ground, temperatures are looking okay. We're in the upper 20s to low 30s for a lot of us. It is 35 degrees at O'Hare, 34 at the Chicago lakefront, already down to 29 degrees in Waukegan, and it's 35 in Morris, still at 41 degrees in LaSalle, 38 in Merrillville, and we're now at 34 degrees in Valparaiso. Once you factor in the breeze, there's not a ton of a breeze out there. We have maybe 5 to 10 mile per hour winds out of the east-southeast. That's really about it. But it is enough to make a difference when it comes to our wind chill. So we've kind of sliced off a couple numbers here, a couple degrees between the actual air temperature and the wind chill. So this is what it's feeling like out there. And throughout the overnight, here's what you can expect. Our next 12 hours, temperatures really aren't going to move all that much. A lot of us are going to remain fairly steady. We have that southeasterly wind that's going to likely become a little more easterly throughout the overnight. And remember, Lake Michigan temperatures play a huge role this time of the year. So with those winds coming in off the water, our air temperatures are going to be pretty similar to what the water temperatures are, and that's putting us in the mid-30s during the overnight. And then tomorrow we are expected to very, very slowly rise into the upper 30s throughout the morning. Eventually we're going to be in the 40s. Now later this week we're going to be warming up in a really big way, and you can actually see here that I didn't adjust the meteogram, which is all the bars here, but what that should say on Saturday is that we're looking at high temperatures that are going to be right around 67 degrees. So I need to adjust my charts here to account for some of those warmer temperatures. But that just goes to show you we have a really big warming trend in store for us, and it doesn't stop there. It's going to keep going. So even next week is trending warmer than average. But remember, we have quite a bit of rain that we have to get through. Coming up very shortly after this 2-minute break, I will have details on the rain that's coming our way and also just how long this warmth is going to stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. And who is ready for a warm up? I know there's a lot of us here that are very, very ready for those spring-like temperatures. The next couple of days around here, again, we are in the 40s, near 50 on Thursday, but then Friday and Saturday, that's when we really get into the good stuff. We are planning on high temperatures that are going to be in the 60s, but the big question is this false spring, or does it look like it's going to be sticking around? And don't forget, meteorological spring, that began on March 1st. In the meteorology world, the climatology world, we do seasons a little bit differently than the astronomical world, and there is a very good reason for that. It comes down to record keeping, really, and just kind of tallying up and keeping track of what's normal for any given month. So meteorological seasons, it breaks it up, the year up into 3-month chunks, and everything is perfect from year to year. So again, it's just kind of easier from a bookkeeping standpoint, record keeping standpoint, and that's why our seasons are a little bit different. But let's talk about whether this is going to be a real spring for us or more of a false spring. Well, according to the Climate Prediction Center here, things look pretty good. So again, we start in the 60s this weekend. This particular map, what this is showing us is that not just here, but a large portion of the lower 48 are actually expected to be warmer than average between the dates of March 8th through the 12th, which happens to be Sunday through Thursday of next week. So once we break into those 60s late this week and into this weekend, there's a good chance that this warmer air is really going to be sticking around. Now, these maps can sometimes be a little misleading, and that's because it looks very warm, right? When you see those darker colors, your brain instantly thinks, oh, wow, we're in for a really big warm up. And sometimes that can be true, but this isn't talking about the intensity of the warm up. It's more so the probability of being warmer than average. So you really have to focus on what is average for this time of the year. It's 42 degrees. So anytime that we see numbers popping up in our models that are higher than 42 degrees, you know, that gives us confidence that we're looking at warmer than above average temperatures. So that's what the Climate Prediction Center is suggesting here with this map, is that we have warmer than average conditions leading into next week. But then expanding the map out a little bit farther here, this is from March 10th to the 16th. You can see we could be in for a little bit of a pattern change here. And a lot of what it's going to come down to is going to be the placement of the jet stream. So I mentioned this a few minutes ago, right at the top of the show, that whenever you see those really large dips in the jet stream, that's when you have typically stronger storm systems coming through, a really major wind shift. And by the middle of the month, looks like we could be dealing with some of that and maybe tapping into some of that colder air that's off to the north and west. So something to watch out for going into the middle of the month. Let's drag things out here the next 10 days. So we've already kind of covered the first 5 in very high detail here. So a big warming trend late this week. But then next week, you'll notice that models are keeping us in the 50s and 60s, so way above average. And it looks like we're really kind of going into the month of March, not so much like a lion, but a little more like a lamb. So we'll have to watch what that means toward the middle and end of the month. All right, 5-day forecast as far as rainfall is concerned. This is something that's been a big talker throughout the weather world because we're going to see these parades of systems coming through this week. But for those of you thinking, oh, okay, darn it, I'm going to have gray skies the entire week. Not entirely true. So we're going to be in and out of the rainfall, and at times we may even break into a little bit of sunshine, but it's just going to be several systems coming through the area one after the other because of that more zonal flow that we have when it comes to our jet stream. So tomorrow, we have a chance of rain that's going to be arriving during the day. We might see a couple isolated rain showers, but that's really about all. I think most of us stay dry until late afternoon into the evening when a storm system begins to lift in from the south. And then we're going to see another system coming our way on Wednesday. Another system's going to move in on Thursday. And then Friday morning, I think we're staying mainly dry, but another storm system comes through Friday night and leads us into Saturday. And that one could be bringing some thunderstorms. So that's going to be something that we watch out for. This isn't a bad thing for us, though. One thing that I really wanted to point out is the drought monitor. So oftentimes, we kind of don't always keep up with the drought during the winter months, right? Because everybody's just concerned about snow. Is it going to be impacting my morning commute? And a lot of people don't notice drought conditions as much because it's not the growing season. So people aren't so concerned about their lawns and their gardens. But take a look at this. It's pretty eye-opening, especially downstate in central Illinois, central Indiana, right on into northwest Ohio. We actually have extreme drought conditions. So all of this rain that's going to be coming through, I'm really glad to see that it's taking more of a southerly track. Yes, we're going to get in on it here in the Chicagoland area, but I think most of the focus really is going to be just south of the region, and that's a really good thing for places like Champaign, Muncie, Indiana, over toward Toledo, Ohio, is where we are seeing those extreme drought conditions. Now, here at home, it's not so bad near the lakefront. Notice how we're not really highlighted in the color here. That means that we're not dealing with any sort of drought conditions in places like Chicago, up toward Evanston, back into most of DeKalb, or I should say DuPage County. But in places like DeKalb County, that's where we see that yellow shading showing up into Lake County, Illinois. We have abnormally dry conditions. It rounds the lake down into portions of Newton and Jasper counties. But then the drought conditions, they worsen really quickly the farther south and southwest that you go. So for those of you that are in portions of southwestern LaSalle County, far southern Kankakee, Newton and Jasper counties, that's where we have a moderate drought, if not a severe drought. So again, it's actually a really good thing that we have all of these rain chances that are coming our way in the next few days. Future precipitation, this is running us all the way through the upcoming weekend. So this is all of the storm systems kind of parading through and what they could potentially bring to our region. Not a ton of rain, but it's good that it's not all coming at once, because you know, our ground is still frozen just a few inches below the surface. So if we were getting a lot of rain all at once, we'd be dealing with flooding concerns, but that really isn't going to be the case this week. So most of the area is actually looking at getting around 1.25 inches to about 1.75 inches. And as of now, models are suggesting that the highest totals are going to be southwest, places like LaSalle County, and then south of I-80, which again is a really good thing because that's where we're seeing the worst drought conditions. The map that you're looking at now, this is kind of another way of showing you where are we at when it comes to rainfall. So this is the percentage of normal rainfall that we have received in the last 30 days. So when you see 5% in portions of Kane County, that means we've only received 5% of our normal rain or snowfall in the last 30 days. So it's no wonder that we're dealing with abnormally dry conditions, right? We could really use that across the region. In places like Chicago, we've only received about 28%, about 25% in portions of Kankakee County, and down to 10 to 12% across the far western extent of LaSalle County. Satellite and radar, things are quiet for now, but again, tomorrow we do start to see those rain chances beginning to ramp up. Again, that's going to continue on and off through the day tomorrow, but the heavier stuff, that's going to come more so during the late afternoon into the evening. I'll show you that right after this short break.
Fox Local.
Welcome back. It is time to talk about all of that rain that is coming our way this week. Again, we have multiple storm systems that are going to be coming through. The first one is going to be arriving tomorrow. Let's take a check of Futurecast here. Out there this evening, it's actually really nice. We have mostly clear to partly cloudy conditions overhead. But tonight, again, just in time for that lunar eclipse, I do expect to see increasing cloud cover. So it's not a sure bet that we're going to be able to see that in the early morning hours. But if you are hoping to see that lunar eclipse, it looks like the best viewing time is going to be from about 5:04 a.m. lasting until 6:03 a.m. That's when we're going to be in the total eclipse phase, when the moon should be having that beautiful red hue. All right, now tomorrow morning, we wake up to temperatures that are going to be hovering just above the freezing mark. And you'll notice here that there's going to be at least a chance of a couple isolated rain showers coming through, but nothing major during the day. It's not until closer to sunset that we start to see the heavier band of rain pushing in from the south. And for those of you that are near and south of I-80, that's where we see the best chance of some of those heavier downpours coming through. Then that's, again, wave number one. We have very briefly high pressure that's going to build in, so we may get a glimpse of the sunshine Wednesday morning before yet another round of rain begins to move through as this low pressure system passes to our south. So the heaviest rain with a few of these systems, especially early this week, will actually be passing south of Chicagoland, but we're going to be on the northern edge of that, picking up some of those rain showers moving through at times. Low pressure is going to move through on the day Wednesday evening into Wednesday night. Then by Thursday, notice how that cold front, it's not really moving through the area, so we're not going to see a huge sway in temperatures or anything like that. But we are going to see another push of rainfall coming through. But these are fairly fast movers. Again, we're not looking at an all-day rain on any day this week. So when you see the 3-day forecast, the 5-day forecast, it looks very, very rainy. But I promise you, it is not going to be raining all day, every day. Futurecast rainfall here. This is going to get us through the middle of the week, so I'm taking us through the end of the day on Wednesday. And you can see that, especially north of I-80, it's not a ton just yet. So it's not until the later rounds this week that we really start to see those totals adding up. If you are north of I-80, south of I-80, though, we're looking at the potential anyway of some pretty decent rainfall through the end of the day on Wednesday. Notice portions of Kankakee County, Newton and Jasper counties, we could be seeing over 3/4 of an inch of rain. So that's pretty good. Right now, here's the view. Not a lot of people out at the bean right now. We have temperatures that are sitting in the mid-30s. Wind chill temperatures are down to about 30 degrees. And we have east-northeasterly winds right around 6 miles per hour. So we still have that flow coming in off of the water. And because of that, it's actually going to keep our temperatures fairly mild tonight. Right now, we're sitting in the upper 20s in places like Waukegan, but mid-30s elsewhere. And that's where a lot of us are going to stay during the overnight. So I think at O'Hare, we're very briefly going to dip down to about 32 degrees, but most areas are actually counting on temperatures hovering right around 33 or 34. So I'm not overly concerned about any showers moving through during the overnight. There is a very, very low chance that we could be seeing an isolated rain shower. And if we do, I think it's actually going to be closer to the Wisconsin state line. Everywhere else, we're just seeing increasing cloud cover throughout the overnight. And then tomorrow is when we see the better chance of some of that rain moving in, especially south of I-80. So your forecast low temperatures tonight, average is 27. Again, most of us are going to be hovering right around that freezing mark. So your out the door forecast for Tuesday doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look great, right? Nobody likes to drive in the rain, and we are going to be dealing with that going into the early morning hours. Isolated rain chances. Temperatures should be right around 37 degrees by 8. By 10, we're up to around 40, and then eventually our high temperatures, they're really not going to be that much warmer than the low 40s. A lot of us are only going to top out in the lower 40s, but